Okay. COVID notice. So Ivana, we were talking about the exams and the requirements. And we have quiz after each chapter. We're going to start with the first chapter next week. Today I'm going to talk just about a couple of words of introduction. And we have a midterm and a final. For every chapter we do a couple of IDs. And then those IDs come up at the midterm. And there will be an essay on the midterm. And we repeat the same thing for another 7 weeks after. So basically the first thing that is coming up for you guys is going to be at the end of next week. We're going to open the first quiz for chapters 1 and 2. So that's coming up in 10 days.
Are we gonna always meet in person?
Yes.
Okay, if this is the class, the size this amount?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's
It's
good.
with social distancing.
So we don't
and-
have to do most of the stuff online then? Like the quizzes are gonna be in person?
Yeah,
Okay.
the quizzes are going to be mostly online.
Oh, okay.
But I always did that, like, on Canvas. So, no change. And the IDs we're going to have for the midterm and the final, we're going to have an actual exam in here.
What does that mean, the IDs? Is that a test?
IDs, yeah, it's, you'll see it's coming
Oh.
up, but let me tell you what I told them. It's basically, we have a couple of people, it's going to usually be people, and you're going to prepare those people in here. So you come here, nothing to prepare ahead of time, but you come here with your phones, you Google the person, and tell us who that person was. And we gather those people, 5, 6 for every chapter, and they get into a pool of IDs, and I select 20 IDs for you guys or something, or 10 IDs for you guys to have it on the midterm. So, and there we actually, I make a little sort of get to know quiz about the stuff that I'm just about to talk now. So it'll give you an easy introduction on how it goes.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who doesn't like to jump into the water, but I always move slowly, so I assume all other people are like that. So
Yes.
I don't like surprises. And especially pranks. I don't like pranks. It's an awful habit.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, I shouldn't have said that. I live to regret it. But anyways, start with Western civilization, right? There are 2 words in there, Western and civilization. And there's Western civilization 1, and then there's Western civilization 2, right? But so let's start to unpack those things and see what they mean. Western. And it's a very tricky term. What does it mean, Western? Western like cowboys? Like in Western movies? Anybody watches the cowboy movies
Mm-hmm.
anymore? They used to call them Western movies.
Yeah.
Is that kind of civilization we're talking about? No. What is Western civilization?
You said it in the beginning, it's like medieval times, like ancient Rome, Greece, like those
Yeah.
that time period.
Yeah, no, that kind of people know. But why is it called Western? Why don't we call it like Roman
Like
civilization?
Because it's in Europe?
It's in Europe.
Or-
So why is Europe called Western civilization then?
Because it started there and then it moved this way to
To
where we are.
across the Atlantic?
Yeah,
Because
because civilization, didn't like the people start, they're talking about the Enlightening era and all that stuff, and they
Yeah.
started thinking, and the way society was started going faster than it did where we are now.
yeah, So, but why do we call it Western? Why don't we call it like European civilization?
Maybe because that's where it originated from, like where most of our civilization started from. Like it started from Egypt.
Uh-huh.
It started to grow up to ancient Rome, then to Greek, then to like.
Yeah, wait a second. Now, Egypt is not in Europe.
Oh no, but excuse me.
So is it,
It started.
is it part of
somewhere.
Western civilization?
It's part of it.
It is, we're gonna do it, but why Egypt?
Why Egypt?
I thought it was, it's about Europe and about European people getting into America, right? That's what we sort of agreed on, but why Egypt?
That's where it
So it's all
started.
connected.
Huh?
That's where it kind of started.
Aren't we talking about all that, like, over there from the top to the bottom?
Like, top of one over here?
Between, like, no, okay, so where Europe is, and then the sea, and then the top of Africa that have like Egypt and all that?
Oh, this part,
Yeah.
the Mediterranean,
Yeah.
right? But what about things like, you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay, what about Latin America?
That's some.
Is that part of the Western civilization? Huh? No?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. As, they started out civilization with like Aztecs
Uh-huh.
and they also have their own civilization where technology kind of moved fast as well.
So they're not part of the Western, or?
They are,
They're not.
they are.
They are. But aren't they like related to the Aztec and the Inca and?
Yeah, isn't that different? Isn't that Latin American history?
Yeah, the word itself is really tricky. I don't know why they picked it up. It's kind of, well, I kind of know why they picked it up. The reason why they picked it up is, in reality, it's really a Christian civilization. Or, what we call it generally Judeo-Christian civilization. So that's how you get Egypt. Well, Moses was in Egypt, therefore Egypt kind of comes in, right? But in the last couple of hundred years, the West, our civilization, so to speak, became very secular. And it wasn't really politically correct anymore to say, it's a Christian civilization. Therefore, they had to invent a different term. So we call it Western. Anyways, it's, even being secular is really part of Western civilization. That the secular ideas are one of the products of Western or Christian civilizations. But it creates certain issues, like this guy here, he thinks, for example, that Russia and Latin America don't belong to the Western civilization. I think he's wrong, but I understand, why he argues.
What's his argument?
Hmm?
Like what do you mean? Like, what's the problem? Like, what is the issue? Like, they're not.
Well, in this particular guy, he's sort of what we call a WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You heard of that expression, right? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So he likes England, and he thinks that England and America have a special place. And really, if you were to ask him, well, it's only England. If France, maybe, but when you go to Spain, it's just not really England anymore. People have their own preferences. I would go with a broader definition. Let's take this religion, Christianity, which is predominant, which you go outside of the West. You go to Africa, you go to India, and usually people identify us Westerners as Christians. Now, personally, you might not be Christian. You might be Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist. There is a Church of Satan these days, too. But still, you know, for ID purposes, when you step out in India, they say, ah, those are those Christians. So that's how these things work. They are not tight divisions, but a little bit fluid. So I would say, you know, that Russia, which is predominantly a Christian country, Latin America, and Africa, well, you see Africa here divided. It is divided according to religion. The northern part of Africa is Muslim. The southern parts of Africa is predominantly Christian, except for the coast here. Well, you know, they would also be part of the Western civilization, because it's really a Christian civilization, even though for PC purposes we don't want to say that. What other civilizations are out there? Well, you have Muslim, right? India, Hindu, China. What is this yellow thing over here? Kind of around China and in China, but Buddhist. And for example, there is one of the pickles is China. Trying to figure out what the religion of China is a very difficult thing. Throughout history, now China is officially an atheist country. It's run by the Communist Party of China, which is officially, you know, Marxist atheist party. But traditionally, Chinese religion has been pick and choose. So they have their own Chinese traditions that we call Confucianism, but you know, they have Buddhist stuff, and they have Tao stuff, and the ancestor worship, and everybody kind of makes their own mixture. Japan is very similar in that regard. There is a native tradition of Japan that we call Shinto, but then there is also Buddhist tradition in Japan. So, but it's really, when you look at this picture, picture tells you that kind of religion determines these civilizations. And this is Mr. Huntington who did the map. And I think that he was right. Some time ago I thought he was wrong, but I think that he got it right, at least that part. I would disagree about, you know, in particular about Russia, about Latin America, about Africa, Southern Africa here. But overall, I think, you know, that even historically speaking, the word civilization is related to the word cult. So cult and culture are related. Cult, culture, and then civilization. They are related. For example, I don't know, somebody's Jewish and wearing a yarmulke and, you know, and the locks and everything, and you don't offer them lobster because they don't eat seafood, shellfish, right? Or pork sausages. Not a good idea. So, History 101 is our Western sim, right? We have also History 102 is the second part. 1 and 2 is the second part, where we cover the more modern stuff. So basically, somebody mentioned Enlightenment. Somebody mentioned the Enlightenment. So the second part, we go all the way up to the Enlightenment in the first part. So we finish basically with Reformation. And the second part starts with the Enlightenment and onwards. And the Enlightenment is really important for the formation of the state. Thinkers of the Enlightenment thought that, it's important to have a well-organized state. I'm not so sure about it. We have a well-organized state and it won't let us, dine outside, and so maybe a little bit of disorganized state would be better, but who knows these things. Anyways, so what I'm trying to say is that 102 is modern, but we have also history 103, which is then called world history, and that's this. So Western and Islam and Hindu and China. Forget about Australia, too few people live down there. When you think about the importance, there's 20 million people in Australia and 1.5 billion people in China. In the short course on world history, Australia is going to drop out. But so, if you're interested in other cultures, that would be History 103, World Civilization. But now you're stuck here with me and with the Western Civ. So we I hope I kind of explained what we mean by Western. Now let's get to the second word, civilization. There is culture, there is civilization. Ancient Romans, I think, defined it the best. Civilization comes from the Latin or the Roman word civis, which means city. So for ancient Romans, civilized people were city people. And that means we would qualify. We live in Europe metropolitan area. We're civilized. Are we? I don't know, when you jump on the train and the train is full and you try to get into the train on the Penn station at 4:30 in the afternoon and they run over you and you can't get into it because the train is full. It doesn't look very civilized, right? But what makes a society civilized?
Walls.
Walls?
Laws, like there's rules, there's regulations.
Oh, laws, right. Oh, okay, yeah. It's
There's
kind
a
of
sense of direction that people have to follow.
some sort of order, right?
Mhm.
Some sort of order. Yeah. What about the society that would be like a society of hunters?
Hunters?
Hunters, who,
Mhm.
or,
So what about that?
well, they roam free, they catch animals, they eat.
Yeah. I mean, with
Do they
that-
have order? Are they civilized?
I mean, in order to hunt, I mean, I think you need some sort of like identification to have a firearm. I mean,
Uh-huh.
even then, I can understand, there's still people who are uncivilized, even with the, laws and
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's the thing in the society that's coming in with society. There's gonna be
Yeah.
criminals, there's gonna be civilized people, and they coexist. I mean, that's just my way of looking at it.
Yeah, so that they might have some sort of rules.
But there's
Like, rules of hunting, or, what do we do if somebody's too sick to hunt?
Mhm.
Maybe they have some sort of, but is there a point when they actually start writing down those rules?
Well, for hunters. Not
Yeah.
really. I mean, it's just that's just, I mean, with that, they don't have a code. It's just more it's just something that's just.
Yeah,
It's
agreed.
just spread around,
Uh-huh.
even then, that can be changed like, you know, it's like, oh, well, like with hunters, like, oh, don't go there, don't go here, or I don't know, like, I'm not sure how hunters work, but I know it's not like a code of conduct where it's like, okay, to become a hunter, you have to do this, this.
Yeah,
It's not like that. Same thing
Yeah.
with media.
Huh.
I don't know. Just talking.
Usually, you know, tradition in history has been to take writing as a sure sign of, okay, this is civilized now. This is a civilized society. So if these people have writing, then we go, okay, those are civilized. Otherwise, you know, what do we call them? Barbarians, wild, or... There is a story, the first story that we have written comes from Mesopotamia, from Iraq, here, and in general what we call the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, Lebanon, Turkey. The oldest story that we have recorded is called Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh. And it has a character in there, his name was Enkidu, the wild man. He's sort of a character in the story. And he comes as a person outside of the city. And people in the city considered him wild. We don't know why. I mean, that doesn't tell us, you know, what does he look like, what makes him wild. Just the people in the story say, okay, this Enkidu, he's a wild man. And he starts living with the people in the city, and then he mellows and becomes civilized. A lot of people consider, you know, being civilized as something not too good. Right. There is something with writing that is important. We live in a natural world, right? Outside of this classroom is nature. You go to Watchung Mountains and there are, you know, bears and other bears. But there are definitely some foxes and snakes and I don't know what other kinds of animals. And nature functions around the principle of survival of the fittest. That at least was Darwin's idea. That there is a struggle for resources. That's what. Hey, go on in. Yeah. So there is a struggle for resources. That's why we get anxious when we lose our jobs, because the reaction is built in us. Like that's why the dogs freak out when the owners leave them at home. There is this existential threat. You know, what I'm going to eat if this owner or whatever, you know, person is not around. And writing and civilization in general is a way for us human beings to deal with these issues. In other words, all animals, at least, you know, complicated animals like, you know, cats and dogs and things of that sort, they teach their young what to do. But we can do it way more efficiently. So we don't depend anymore on nature. Because nature could be very cruel. Like if we were living in a hunting society, and you and I, we wear glasses. Without glasses, we're sort of at a disadvantage in hunting. So, you know, the elephant comes close and we're like, oh, is there no... Should I shoot at that thing? Not really a good hunter, right? So we would be dead very quickly in a society that is based on hunting. But we use writing system and civilization in general to give our offspring a set of skills that we hope will get you and all of us through the struggle that life is. And for that reason, a civilization is something very strange. It's sort of outside of the natural world. In the natural world, you depend on your DNA. Glasses or no glasses. Are you tall enough? Are you strong enough to fight with a bear? And things of that sort. No, but we use writings and skills and these sort of communication language in general to overcome the limitations of our DNA. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's not a perfect process. But that sort of language would be the basic difference between, you know, us and the rest of nature. And to be honest, animals communicate. I mean, I have a cat at home, and he guides me every morning, and you know, and he takes me what does he want to eat? If he goes to the fridge, he wants those Friskies with catnip. And if he goes to another place, he wants wet food. And if he goes to the third place, he wants the dry food. So he's fairly picky and is a good communicator. But there is a limit to communication among animals. And with us, there is a limit also in communication with people. As we all know, some people you can't reach them. So there is an obvious limit there, but for the most part it works. Yeah. With some misunderstanding, you say something, they misunderstand you, but you get the message across. So, and then this civilization grows and builds institutions like university. Universities have been around for, I don't know, 800 years now. But they haven't been around forever. And that's one of the, so anyways, this was about Western and civilization, right? Let's get to another topic, a little bit about history, and start the story, or where is this Western Civ going to go altogether? History in general, today, and it has been like this for a while, is not a very popular discipline. For the most part, people think it's about, you know, memorization. Yeah, it's important to memorize. You know, there's a lot of stuff to memorize. That's what it is. But the biggest problem with history, the modern culture sees, is it's useless. That's what a lot of people today will tell you. And I'd like to address the question because it might be right. You know, these people might be right. Maybe we're just wasting our time with history. Who cares what happened 2,000 years ago? And because the modern civilization, the world that we live in today, is focused on solving problems. And it's been like that since that thing that, Enlightenment. Since world history, Western civ too, right? There is a problem, I don't know, a lot of people are drinking. They meet and say, why are people drinking? Because they're unhappy. How do you know they're unhappy? Oh, we ask them, and these are the results of the opinion poll. And then they ask, why are people unhappy? They're unhappy because, I don't know, COVID. Oh, okay, so we want to fix the problem. We invent the vaccine and, right? They say vaccine is coming November or something. First, they mentioned the 1st of November. You're going to take it? You're supposed to, right, it's going to be, anyways.
You gotta test it out first.
Yeah, that was my thinking. Let me see how it works, and then, okay, that's my thinking too. So, but the modern world wants to solve problems. There is a problem, I don't know, traffic jam on the bridge. We do a study, we figure, okay, we need to widen the lanes or replace the bridge or do something, and we fix the problem. The history of the problem, it's not important for us. And a lot of people will tell you. But there are certain problems that can only be solved with history. And those are the problems that are related to understanding of society. For example, you asked the question, I don't know. I was walking the main street in Elizabeth this morning, and I noticed all the churches on the main street are Protestant churches. None of them is Catholic. Why is this so? The Catholic churches are usually away from the main street, and they're relatively new buildings, built in the 50s or 30s or so and so. But not like, these Protestant churches in downtown, they're from 1820 or something, 200 years old. Now, this problem might look trivial, just, me walking in the morning and asking silly questions. But how about we do a study of CEOs of major companies in New York? What percentage of those CEOs are actually of Dutch origin? And I haven't done the study, but I'm pretty sure that if you were to do the study, you will come up with a percentage of, I don't know, something, and that percentage would be higher than the percentage of Dutch people of Dutch origin living in this country. And the explanation would be historical. New York was founded by the Dutch. A lot of wealthy families in New York historically have been Dutch. To name just one, you've been to Grand Central Station in New York? Who is the person at the facade on the Grand Central Station? There is a monument, a statue, unless they tore it down. But
I've never seen a statue.
you haven't seen it?
Oh, outside.
It's
Oh,
outside?
yeah. I don't know.
Right, there is a ramp that goes up for the taxis, and right there is Mr. It's important to know, if you want to, to get around in New York, that's Mr. Cornelius Vanderbilt. Van der Bilt. It tells you he was Dutch. From the city of Bilt, Netherlands. The family was originally from Staten Island. They owned probably half of Staten Island. And they made the money by, Cornelius was a captain of a steamboat, ferry that carries you from Staten Island to Manhattan was his ferry boat. Now think about what consequences does that have for your life. Circumstances. So you have descendants of Mr. Vanderbilt are still around, and there are hundreds of them, including Anderson Cooper. You know Anderson Cooper?
Oh, from CNN.
Huh?
From CNN.
The guy who
Yeah.
comes from the Vanderbilt family. Well, it's very different if you come from such a wealthy family than if your parents just came in from, I don't know, Guatemala and they barely speak English. We say, of course, this is America, and everybody is treated equally. But money talks, and it's not just money. It's the accumulated experience of generations in the family. So when the seventh generation come over after Cornelius Vanderbilt, they're expected to go to Yale, or I don't know, Princeton, or something of that sort. So these are tricky things, and history can give you good answers. And only history can give you these answers. Otherwise, as far as solving the problems and predicting what's going to happen on the stock market, why? Because everything that deals with human beings, and history deals with human beings, it's very unpredictable. Why did you think that the class was not face-to-face? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, just, came to you. And it was, logical to, I had my doubts when I saw in the catalog, it's going to be face-to-face, I was like, are you sure, is this wrong? Then I called my boss, the double check, and I did the same thing that you did, so So what I'm trying to say is I don't want to pick on you. No, I'm quite glad that you're here, of course. And it's a lot of fun actually to be back in the classroom and talk to real people instead of these cameras and other instruments of torture. But human beings are unpredictable. They couldn't predict the elections 4 years ago. They were everybody was wrong. And it was all scientific, it was all done, Why? Because there is something hidden in this word, culture and civilization, that makes us unpredictable. So that's why it's very difficult to make a guess about what's going to happen in the future. That's why throughout history, everybody who could predict the future was considered a divine man, or a divine person. Prophets or things like that. Wow, they can predict the future because it's. This guy here, to his credit, he's dead. Oh, Mr. Huntington is gone. The map that I showed you. He sort of made the prediction that in the 90s, he made a prediction that actually in the 21st century, religion was going to play an enormous role in world affairs. And people thought, Samuel, his name was Samuel, you're nuts. They're making fun of him. And then September 11 happened, 2000. Was it 2001?
Yeah.
2001, and suddenly everybody realized, holy smoke, religion really plays a huge role. There are people out there who are willing to, kill themselves for religion, whatever, and drive a plane into a building and things of that sort. So, that's what I'm trying to say about history. That it's a bit of a warning, because history explains the origin of things, and we don't want to know about the origin of things. In general, I don't want to know about the origins of this shirt. It's history, right? I want to wear it and wash it and forget about it. That's the modern world that we lived in. History therefore asks questions that modern world often consider useless. But I don't think it's useless because, I thought that this example of Mr. Vanderbilt kind of gives you an idea how socially important these things are. Understanding society is complicated. Okay. I have a few more things I'd like to add also. So in terms of history, our human race, where do we come from? What is our history? Where does it start? There were monkeys, and suddenly one monkey said, I don't want to be a monkey anymore. I want to be a human. Right? Is that how it worked? Or I don't know.
That's what they say.
Huh?
That's what they say. People say God created us, and the science say that we came from monkeys and turned to humans.
Right. What's the Bible say?
That God created us, basically.
And who was the first human being?
Adam and Eve.
Okay, Adam and Eve, right. Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. Those are for the long time, very long time, till about, 300 years ago, most of our information about the past came from the Bible. Majority of people would, hear these things in church, and it was good enough. And then this movement of secularization and enlightenment came about. And people started developing what we call science. So people started, double checking on the Bible. Is it true? How do we know? Well, one of the things that they did in the 19th century, for example, now almost 200 years ago, they went to the lands of the Bible, and that would be the Middle East, right? They went to Iraq and Syria and Israel and started digging. And in digging this stuff, they found, among other things, the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh is interesting, and it was interesting at the time, because it contains several stories that are similar to the stories in the Bible. For example, the story of the flood. So what's the story of the flood?
That,
It goes from Adam and Eve, And they had children, and they multiplied, and they became very wicked.
God wanted to, well, according to the Bible, God wanted to flood the earth with water, and then like he talked to Noah and said, "Hey, get everybody on the boat, get 2 of each animal, and put them on
So
the
there
boat."
is Noah, and there was
The ark, like the boat.
Mrs. Noah?
He had a wife, right? I'm assuming he had a family with
He had a
him.
family.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's call her Mrs. Noah. So Noah, so flood, right?
Boat.
The boat, the camels, the
elephants,
animals,
lions,
whatever.
2, one female, one male, so they can procreate.
And then what?
And then
Starting,
God,
starting blood.
Huh?
the water went away.
The water went away. Did they have children? Noah and Mrs. Noah?
They had 2 kids,
Yeah.
I think they said,
3 kids actually.
3. Okay.
3 kids, okay. But the story of the Bible then continues with not really children of Noah, but he was a grandchild of Noah, Mr. Abraham.
Oh, yeah.
So then the story of the Bible becomes the story of the Jewish people. Because Abraham is the father of the Jewish people. I say this to kind of give you a short summary of the Bible, really short summary of the whole Bible, right? But also to give you an idea how people, 500 years ago imagined history. They called this period pre-diluvian. It means before flood, because diluvian is kind of like deluge, flood, that's the same word. So pre-diluvian. And even they realized there is something very strange about these things at the beginning. You're not sure if that's like a real story or it's a moral message of some kind, or are you supposed to take it symbolically? Things that people debate to this day, On the first day God created this, and the second day, and you start wondering, okay, this day, is that like our day, or is it a day of
Yeah, like,
a longer day that lasts 10,000 years or millions of years and things? So those are the questions that gradually science raised. But these questions came out of our interest to know the past. So we'll get to this biblical story fairly quickly, because our first chapters are really, they don't want to tell you in the textbook, because then people will say, oh, you're trying to convert me and whatever. But the first couple of chapters really follow a biblical story. They give you a scientific, a historical view of what happened. But it's really the biblical story put into the context of the ancient world. So I'm thinking, okay, let's give you at least the skeleton of the biblical story that Adam and Eve, and then the second Adam, because people who lived before the flood, they don't really count, because this is kind of like a reset, right? It starts all over again. It comes back to 2 people. And then we go to Abraham, and then we'll get to, I don't know, other people like Moses in Egypt and things of that sort. And so we get to Egypt, we get to Mesopotamia and stuff of that sort. But I want to give you also a scientific story. And especially through the DNA, that the scientists determined. For a long time they thought that we are not really all the same species, or at least there is some sort of subgroup. So they thought some people originate from Africa, and some people originate from China, and some people whatever. now the DNA says that we all originate actually from a group of about 24, that would be 24 women. They estimate. It could be 48, it could be, I don't know, 36. But you know, a couple of dozen, a small group of women are what the DNA scientists, microbiologists they call them, you know, the first Eves. Not this Eve here, but Eves, plural, right? It means that there is, how many people in the world? 7, 8 billion?
Like 8.
Huh?
Now like 8.
8?
I think so.
But we all come back, all of our genetic material comes to a very limited number of people. And the original is somewhere here in Africa, in the south of Africa. That was about 200,000 years ago. 200,000 years ago. From there, the human race spread around the world. Through Africa, through Asia, China, Europe. There is a bit of debate, did people come to Europe from here or from here? Who knows those things? It's very difficult to find out. What they do is, you know, dig up skeletons and figure out that these skeletons are, I don't know, 150,000 years ago. They look at them, they measure them, they do a DNA analysis. But with these things, it's very difficult to be certain. How did people come into Americas? Because Africa, Asia, and Europe are kind of connected. Australia, kind of too, right? No?
Wasn't it because during the Ice Age, where the ocean was kind of frozen, and so our ancestors kind of crossed from like Russia, Japan, towards
Across the Atlantic or?
across the
Right, exactly. Here.
yeah,
Right. These two parts are about, I don't know how many, 30 miles apart? Bering Straits of Alaska. Bering Straits in the north of Alaska. So actually, the Native Americans are of Asian origin. They came from Asia, from Alaska, and they settled into the various parts of the Americas. So, I don't know, that's about what I have in terms of introduction. We talked about why Western. Usually it's contrast between, you know, West and East, right? Europe and China. That's one way to look at it. We talked a little about what does it mean to have a civilization. And it has something to do with language, in particular written language. And we also talked about history. What does it do? What it doesn't do? Anything else? You had enough? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Today I can, you know, I can let you go a little bit earlier. Turn on this thingy. Bye bye.